It's been over a year since I've had Tesla solar panels installed for my Southern California home.
They're rated at 8,000 watts, and on a good day, I've seen it go as high as 7,000 watts, and I think that's quite nice. I've learned quite a bit over the past few months, and before I dig into that, let's go over why I got solar in the first place, and it was to save the planet. Right after saving my hemorrhaging wallet, of course, it was costing me over $200 a month in electricity bill. Like the good Asian I am, I started doing the maths. $200 a month equals $2,400 a year, $24,000 for 10 years, $48,000 for 20 years, $72,000 for 30 years.
Bruh.
The idea of self-reliance should be everyone's dream. Of course, that typically gets crushed by marriage. It's still a noble dream to have. To keep things simple, if I was to pay $24,000 for a solar system, average it out for 10 years, then I would break even at that point. My solar system cost $29,000. However, there is a tax credit which broke it down to $21,400, and so I am below that threshold. That means I'll finish paying it by 8-ish years. That is the goal, at least. So on paper, everything is looking good. I'm gonna break even in 10 years or less. Even if electric prices go up, what problems can I run into? There are some things that will hamper your solar production, and I want to get into that, starting off with cloud coverage. That is the most offensive one, followed by the rain. If there's cloud and rain, your system isn't producing much. It can still produce, amazingly enough.
A key target to be aware of are your consumption levels. How much are you consuming a day and how much are you consuming a month?
On the really low days, I was producing only 2 kilowatts. The rest of the days, it would go up to 7 kilowatts.
For those who don't know, kilo means 1,000. So 1 kilowatt hour is the amount of energy you'd use if you kept a 1,000-watt appliance running for an hour.
So if you're running a microwave that's 1,000 watts for an hour, that's a kilowatt hour. So my house is equivalent to using 30 microwaves running for a whole hour. It's a lot of energy. Another problem that I face, and you guaranteed will face, are shorter days.
The Earth tilts, and that means that for North Americans, you get the most amount of sun in June and the least amount of sun in December.
So your sun output production is cut drastically in those months. It can go down to as low as a third or a quarter of what you're producing on peak months. Let's go to the next thing that will hamper your sun production, and that's dirt. These solar panels, they will get dirty. You will need to get somebody to clean your panels maybe twice a year, 4 times a year. It just depends where you live. In my scenario, I just figured out how to clean it myself, and it's not as straightforward as you would think. You have to wait until it's cool. You can't clean it while it's hot because it can crack. You have to have a soft bristle brush. Another thing that you have to factor when building one of these is, do you have obstruction? Do you have trees? Can you cut down those trees? Do you have neighbors? Do you have an apartment high-rise that's building next to your building? Do you have laws that prevent that from happening? Because if that doesn't, and somebody builds up a really high building, guess what? They're gonna block your sun, and there goes your solar production. All right, now let's get into the numbers and dig in and see what's going on. It says today, the sun, I've created 19.8 kilowatt hours. I've consumed 21.5 kilowatt hours. So today was a cloudy day. I didn't produce enough to cover my electric use, and that's okay because we will look at historical data. Let's look at the year. This imaginary line right here. And the reason I know where this line belongs is because for the month of November, I used 900 kilowatts and I produced 972. So this line is right about here, okay? So as you can see right here, for the month of January, February, and December, I didn't make enough. I'm not covered. I have to pay the electric company. But for the month of March, April, May, June, and beyond, those 9 other months, I made an excess. And just by looking at this chart, I know that, the excess is going to outweigh the deficiency. So as of right now, the balance for last month was a negative 45. So actually, made enough because I probably didn't spend as much. And for the March of 2023, I'm expected to get over 1,300 in rebates. I'm not quite sure how that works, but I have a negative balance of 1,300. So the amount that I have buffer, why did I get that? Actually, I planned that in advance because I plugged my plug-in Prius and I was planning to get the Cybertruck because I got little man syndrome.
While both are plug-in vehicles, the plug-in hybrid and the Cybertruck being a much larger and heavier vehicle will consume a lot more electric and will require a lot more to charge.
I suspect that that my total expenditure is going to go from $900 a month to about $1,200 a month in kilowatt hours of usage. And if you're planning to get solar, you really have to get familiar with this kilowatt hour usage because that's all the terminology is going to be in. So if I do 1,200, that's going to be more than my average because my average right now I produce is a little bit over 1,000. So my overly large system is not going to be enough to power my Cybertruck or the future Cybertruck whenever Elon decides to make that car. However, it is going to provide for at least 80% of all my usage, and being able to use a vehicle without the need to go to the gas station, being able to use all my appliances for now without even needing to pay the utilities is a pretty darn good idea. So what I don't know is that this $1,300 that's coming back to me, is it coming back all at once? I don't know. I don't get that money or that credit until the end of March. So I've got a few months to wait. Other than that, right now I am overproducing, and if you decide to get a solar system, I highly suggest you overproduce as well because you don't know when you might get an electric car. You don't know when the shade is going to block you. You don't know when you have a wild 1 week long rainstorm that never happens in California. So after 7 to 10 years, I will be producing energy on my own, and it will produce it even beyond.
The panels have a 25-year performance guarantee, and during that 25-year, it should be able to produce 80% of its rated power. Technically, solar panels don't expire and typically degrade over time.
So some items that are X factors is the solar tax credit. Many YouTubers have been saying that it's diminishing after time, and it was true at the time. But after the Inflation Reduction Act, they increased it to 30%. And as far as I understand, it's going to last all the way to 2031. So if somebody's trying to rush you into getting solar, it's just take your time, do your research. You don't have to rush it. I did because I was afraid of that solar tax going away. You don't. That's your luxury. And on top of that, you're saving more than me. I only got 26%. You're getting 30%. And 4% of that 30,000 is extra $1,200. But oh yeah, one thing I forgot to say is that another downside is that I have to recoup more costs than I expected, because when you get solar, they inspect your roof, they see if the tiles are new. Turns out my tile wasn't as new as I thought it was, and so I had to retile half of the roof. And getting somebody to retile half of your roof is quite hard to do, because everybody, they just want to tear down your roof and put a new one up because it's $14,000 to $20,000 from my estimates. It's a lot of money, and $14,000 to $20,000 adding onto the solar system cost, that would have broke my system. So I kept looking and looking. I was persistent, and I found somebody that was willing to do my roof. And I found out that you didn't have to do the entire roof at once, number one. And secondly, you don't have to tear down your roof if you only have one layer. You're allowed to do 2 layers based on California laws.
I wasn't comfortable with the scope creep and ended up with a second layer to keep costs as low as possible.
So I incurred a $6,000 cost on top of the $29,000, and this wasn't tax creditable, so I just had to eat that cost. And even then, I think I'll get out around 10 years because I'm recuperating so much, and the fact that the energy costs are going up Hey, another issue you might have is that what if you don't own your home? What if you're selling your home? Well, if you don't own your home, don't do it. I don't think you'll be able to do it. And if you own your home but you're thinking of selling it, then I would still consider it. And the reason for that is because this is a device that gets permitted, installed as a permanent fixture, so it becomes part of your house. It only increases the value of the house. And if I told you that you're saving $200 a month because you've got this fantastic solar system, that would drive the price up, wouldn't it? And one last thing that I want to talk about that you need to get for your solar system, I'm not going to go in depth with it, but because of the time of use, the utility companies, they're going to put you into a time of use plan. And that means that during certain peak hours, you're going to be charged a higher amount. For instance, our normal hours are charged at 30 cents a kilowatt hour, which is very high already. And during peak hours from 4 to 9, if I use energy during that time and my solar production is low or off because 9 o'clock it's dark already, then I'm charged 50 cents a kilowatt hour. You can see how that adds up extremely fast. So if you have a battery, your battery is charging all day long, and at night it uses it for your peak hour. You start pulling from your battery. It's a 5 kilowatt hour system, and that should offset a lot of usage. 5 kilowatts an hour, that's 5 microwaves going for an hour, or a microwave going nonstop for 5 hours. And I don't think you're going to be using all of that energy, so there's a good chance that during that 5 hours, your battery is powering the house instead of the utility companies, which charges you 50 cents an hour. So that makes you a winner. And if you don't have this protection, which is the battery, guess what? There are people that own solar and do foot a bill because they don't have a battery. So that's just something to be aware of. And if you fit this criteria, you should really crunch the numbers. If you're paying over 100, maybe 150, yeah, you should start considering solar and its long-term advantages for you. And if you could lock in a certain rate, get it at a certain price, highly suggest it. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. See you in the next one.